It's the cocktail hour that shakes and stirs up pharmacy. Welcome to PBM on the Rocks.
I'm not wearing pajama pants. You know, like tuxedo t-shirts, t-shirts that have like tuxedo printed on them, like the bottom equivalent. So they're like, let's go with that.
Man, I normally got to pay for these streams.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, so Jeremy Counts, Lord Dr. Jeremy Counts.
Hi, I'm Jeremy.
Oh, hello. You and I have a common bond because we are together. We serve on Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency, PUTT, to some of the people who are listening to this. You serve on that board. I am the executive director, and collectively, you, I, and the rest of the board, including Ms. Deborah Keaveny, PUTT's president. Welcome, Madam President.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Actually, the three of us, along with the rest of the board, often get together and have the kinds of conversations that we are going to be having tonight, which is, as I recall, your favorite conversation, my friend.
I'm excited. First thing, I'm excited that I'm with some great people. Second, I'm excited that I get to drink after a very, very long day.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. You and me both. And we
I
have
love paying $2,000 for a medicine and being reimbursed $1,900 on it. It's awesome. It's great.
Who doesn't love that? Who doesn't?
Totally sustainable, right?
Mm-hmm. Very sustainable.
Very sustainable. So, Brian Nyquist, since you just were the first one to jump in and speak up, why don't you? We're going to have you introduce yourself and also tell us what you're drinking tonight at PBM on the Rocks.
Yeah. I am the president and CEO for the National Infusion Center Association, nonprofit trade association that supports the nation's community-based infusion centers. I'm drinking a smoked old-fashioned.
Nice.
I'm a big bourbon drinker, and the old-fashioned really lets the bourbon shine with a little extra special sparkle in there. My wife got me a little cocktail smoker for Christmas, so
Oh, you are lucky. Those are great.
I've been overusing it a little bit. I'm pretty sure I've already preserved my GI tract. But PBMs, we are here to talk about shenanigans. Probably a false claim of value and cost savings potential.
Yeah.
See where it goes. But Jeremy, didn't the government start issuing community pharmacies money printing machines to keep business operations going? Because to your point, you acquired a drug at $2,000 and getting reimbursed $1,900. I don't know how else you could run a business on negative margins.
That's right.
It's pretty great. It keeps my cash flow going really well. It's like they're like, oh, we'll pay you better on other scripts. Fucking liars.
Yes. And on that note, Jeremy, what are you drinking tonight, sir?
Me. I have what I call the King Jeremy. It is Jameson on the rocks. And what I do, I've been putting in a little twist here, making it kind of like an old fashioned. I put in a little bit of bitters, and then I also put in a mandarin orange in it and let the mandarin orange soak it up throughout the night. And then the oranges are great later.
Wow.
So it gives it a little hit of orange while also giving me the old-fashioned flavor. I'm a big fan.
Wasn't that called PJ in college?
I have no clue. This is a King Jeremy.
Soaked in the Everclear, and then you would eat the fruit and be gone for the next day and a half.
Now, this would be a great opportunity to introduce Shannon Whiteman-Gerard, who is never on anything that we broadcast at PUTT. She's, in fact, always behind the scenes. She's our operations manager and the editor that makes us sound smart, because if you heard what we really sounded like when we recorded these podcasts, you would be, well, surprised. Anyway, Shannon, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a peach blasphemy.
Ooh,
that sounds spicy.
I created it on the fly. Mainly because I wanted it to apply to, like PBMs. I feel like blasphemy is a very appropriate word. And it's peach cobbler vodka. I infused peach vodka with all the spices and flavors that you would get in the peach cobbler. I did that over Christmas and I had some left over. And then I spiked it even more with a mango guava hard seltzer. So it is now a peach blasphemy.
Wow.
I like that Shannon worked in the word infusion. A shout out kind of to Brian.
I noticed
there, right?
that. Extra points, bonus points, and I
Seriously,
need to
he's
step up
talking
my
about
cocktail
smoking
game.
cocktails. I got to say something.
I feel like these names are escalating. Greg's going to get on here and be like, this one's orphan's blood.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, since you jumped in and you mentioned the shout out to infusion, I think every time we hear the words infusion, value, or cost, we should take a drink. So
Indeed.
that said, Brian, meet each other. You guys are so much alike. Greg, what are you drinking tonight?
So I've got two drinks. So I live in Georgia, but our headquarters is in Alabama. And so when I told Tim, Monique, that I was doing this tonight, he said, well, then what I have to do, and of course they have it in the office, is some Alabama moonshine. But I'm not drinking it. I'm not drinking it, but it was given to me. So otherwise this whole thing could get out of hand, right?
That's in a
Actual
mason jar
mason jar.
unmarked. So that's actual moonshine.
And
not the
that
shit
is
you get.
also mason
Yeah.
jar, no color, white light.
Oh,
and leather.
right. This is
That
like,
is real moonshine.
this is the
God, Greg, don't drop it, whatever you do.
15
Yeah,
minutes
God's
later,
country.
I'm Frank calling PBM executives, right? Like if you start sipping this.
Can you
but so-
hand it to PCMA before they testify and tell them that it's water?
That's it.
What's
So
your
I've
water,
got
Mr. Scott?
Lagavulin.
Here you go.
And the Lagavulin is in a cup, Monique and Shannon, that
Nice.
y'all got me, if you may remember. I think it was
Yes.
either in Orlando or Austin after one of those. And so Lagavulin is Scotch, and I enjoy Scotch, and I got into it. My grandmother was half Scotch and Scotch drinker. She passed away this weekend, but she lived to be 100. And so I was like, if we're doing this
Oh,
this
wow.
weekend, I will have Scotch in honor of her. So
Here's to grandma.
Toast to that.
Here's to
Hey,
grandma.
You know what I love about I think it's Scotch whiskey, right? They don't have the E in the word whiskey. Is that right? They don't have the E. And
Accurate.
I think in America we have the
I like
right?
that Greg is now picking up the bottle to check the spelling.
that's right. Yeah, you're 100%.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Not a Scotch drinker, but good at useless trivia.
Lagavulin's good too. Good taste.
It's good. Like if it's strong, but it's smooth.
Yes.
And so it kind of walks that perfect line. It's really strong, really peaty and smoky, but some of the smoothest Scotch you'll ever drink. So
Yeah,
Just
it's my
perfect.
go-to like sipping scotch.
yeah.
Just perfect for a PBM conversation. So the only person we haven't really heard from is our president, Madam President. What are you drinking tonight?
Well, I got done with an Optum RX audit today.
Oh.
Over 100 prescriptions plus refills attached. They found one discrepancy, which, thank you, Minnesota 62W, means they can't claw back the money because it was a clerical error that did not result in the patient having to pay more or the payer having to pay more. So I got through about $100,000 worth of claims with a zero clawback. However,
Nice.
I had to bust butt to get here. So I am simply drinking beer right now. I will be indulging in something a little more
Toast to that.
later.
Yeah, exactly. Here's to beer. Yay.
Here's to beer.
Right on.
And
I don't
A
have actual
well-earned
cocaine
beer.
at the pharmacy.
Oh man, that was rough.
When you started that statement, I was worried I needed to make you a peach blasphemy with a double shot
Yeah.
and send
I
it to
nearly
Minnesota
stopped.
super fast.
I nearly stopped and bought a bottle of Everclear because that's the way.
Yes, they are truly, truly, truly horrible. And then just so that I can complete the circle, so I am drinking my drink that I always have, which is a Manhattan. I'd love to say I invented it. I didn't. It's a vintage cocktail, and I love vintage cocktails. And what I love about the Manhattan is that between the bourbon, often I have it with a rye. I have no rye here. I was just before we all got together, I was just proclaiming the virtues of Trader Joe's bourbon, of all things. I bought it on a dare. It was $14.99, and it's actually really, really good. So I'm having that with some artisan vermouth, and it's good. So for whatever that's worth, guys, Trader Joe's bourbon, not bad.
Ah.
Yeah.
I had no
see,
idea.
we
they had
live in the
bourbon.
weird South where alcohol sales don't happen until midway through Sunday, and only state-run places are allowed to sell liquor.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh, I'm
Only
sorry.
ABC stores in Virginia, so we can't get Trader Joe's whiskey. Sadness.
That is sad.
Agreed.
But, you know,
Same here
When
in
I
North
moved to
Carolina.
Arizona, I totally forgot the rest of the world sells liquor in like grocery stores and
Yeah.
Walgreens. In
Walgreens,
Texas,
yeah.
they don't let us do that. Texas folk know how to drink a little too good, I guess. It's crazy being running out of bourbon and being able to just pop down the street to your grocery store is it's still crazy. But
Yeah.
Monique, my wife, I got her into bourbon with a French Manhattan.
Ooh, what's
If
that?
you
Ooh,
ever
those
run
are
out
yummy.
of vermouth and you happen to have some Chambord in your liquor cabinet, a little 2-to-1 bourbon or rye to Chambord, 2 dashes of bitters, and you got yourself a French Manhattan.
I like
you're
doing those
substituting
with
Bringing
Japanese
French
whiskey.
Manhattan to the next PBM on the Rocks episode, the French Manhattan.
Shannon, what'd you
people
say?
can actually
about
keep their
Japanese
liquor
whiskey?
cabinets stocked. Like my bottles just go away.
How
Like I
weird
can't
is
ever
that?
keep it stocked. I'm like, oh, I'll get a few of these, and it's like, I guess I had it.
Yeah.
Brian, I had said I like to make the French Manhattans with Japanese whiskey. Japanese whiskey.
Nice.
The Japanese were taught to make whiskey by the Scottish, so it turned out more like Scotch, but a really
It's
lightweight version of Scotch. So
very
I've always
clean.
found that works really well in French Manhattan with the Chambord.
I learned something today.
Yeah, me too. Me
Japanese
too.
Scotch. That's awesome.
They
Right.
call it whiskey. We don't want to offend.
Gotcha. Japanese whiskey.
And the thing is, when you're talking about what we talk about and deal in every day, you need to have distinctions in whiskey and interesting combinations because you never know when you're going to get what was it, Deb? A $100,000 audit?
Could have been $100,000 back if we would have not treated claims properly. But yeah, we sweat for quite a while getting all that documentation ready for them.
Wow.
And for those of you listening that are not in healthcare, by back, she means taken away from her without her consent.
Not that I made any money on that anyway. Let's just
Yeah.
put it out there.
At what point is the risk benefit so outweighed by the risk? Like we're dispensing all these brand name drugs we're going to get audited on. We're not making any money on it, and the risk of being audited for it and I'll have all of it taken back is too much. Like there's no point in dispensing brand name anymore. If you can avoid it, you avoid it.
Well, to that point, we've literally seen situations where pharmacists were negatively reimbursed at point of sale on an expensive brand name drug, and then a year and a half later, lo and behold, there's an audit, and they take back the total reimbursement on top of it, right? Just like insult to injury, and that's not an uncommon thing. I think the good news, to Deb's point, is like that there's these audit protections. And, obviously a lot of states have passed some amazing PBM legislation. Enforcement remains an issue, right? Getting this stuff enforced is difficult, but it's easy in the industry to get frustrated with, they're not abiding by it here, they're not abiding by it there. But just even something as simple as those audit laws that say, hey, if there wasn't an overpayment and there wasn't fraud and there wasn't a misfill, you can't recoup for a clerical error. I mean, that can be a real difference maker. So if you're looking for silver linings, as hard as Deb's day was, it's nice for her to know that, hey, even where they found that clerical error, they can't recoup.
It may or may not have made a difference, but I did attach the law to my stuff that I sent in, and I highlighted everything that they needed to see.
Good for you.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
That should be the trick. So good for you.
Come on.
Yeah, unfortunately, you gotta do their work for them.
Yeah, exactly. They come in and it's we have to spend so much time and man hours just like powering through this stuff just to try to keep our own money. It's insane. Like if they ever came at me for like that much money, and this is like one of my biggest fears. It's like I misread something on a contract where I'm supposed to keep up like this log that no one has heard of out of nowhere that they snuck in and it just went right by us. And then they come in and try to audit me for a bunch of money. Oh my God. I don't know what I'd do. I'd freak out. I'd probably like hole up in like a log cabin with a bunch of bottles of Jameson, just screaming they'll never get me. I just don't know what I'd do with that.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot you can do.
Oh,
which is the problem.
They just take it right out of your bank account. You can't fight it. And if you're going to sue them, it's in our contract. You got to go through adjudication, which costs a fortune anyway. So it's like they've got us to where we have no actual recourse. So what are we supposed to do?
Jeremy, maybe you could post a tweet and say something about burning them down to the ground and see what happens.
Yeah, and get my other accounts banned. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, they're letting human traffickers back on Twitter, but not Jeremy, who went after CVS.
Are they letting human traffickers back on there? Wow, I missed that.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, let's let all these people on, but not Jeremy, who said at CVS he can't wait to see their corporation burn to the ground. Oh no, that's inciting violence.
Nope, he's trying to fix healthcare.
Yeah,
man, this guy
trying to fix healthcare here. But no, let's let the human traffickers
burn it all to the ground. Start again.
That Andrew Tate guy, I like what he's saying. That Jeremy guy, though, no.
Has Elon Musk like interfered yet and allowed you to get your account back? Or
no, he said he was going to reinstate everyone. I was just like, all right, this is probably really bad for the entire world, but I'm going to take this win. and then he just didn't. It's just like, fucking Elon. I bought a Tesla, Elon.
Listen, considering we're all about a half a drink in, I don't know that this is going to help your chances of getting reinstated, Jeremy. Just based on
that's a fair point.
Bring back Hokey Farm, damn it.
Yeah, well, maybe Elon will hear your cry and he'll intervene. Although, it's a sad state of affairs when you're lower than the human traffickers.
Yeah, I know. It really made me have to reevaluate my life.
Yeah. Well, Greg, what's going on over where you are? You're in Alabama, but you represent Georgia. You've got your bottle of Everclear that you're not drinking. He's not drinking it, people.
I'm not drinking it. Not yet, anyway.
Do it, Greg. Snort
But
that.
your boss did give it to you, so you may want to pretend.
Yeah, that's Hey, listen, I wrote the employee manual or helped, and I'm pushing the envelope here with like two bottles of alcohol on during company hours, but we'll see.
If that's not a campaign for we need help and protections against some of these policies, like I don't know what is. Help me. I've got moonshine and a cocktail on my desk, but I have to because of PBM policies.
Are they hitting infusion badly right now?
Not as bad as they're screwing up community pharmacies. That's for sure.
They've already
They
squeezed
still
us
are,
dry.
right?
I figured they'd be coming for you all a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
I'm shocked. So I was a state staffer in 2015, and like I'm shocked that community pharmacies are still able to stay in business and operate. It is beyond ludicrous. And for whatever reason, other aspects of healthcare have been a little bit more insulated from certain PBM policies than pharmacies have, including infusion
direct
centers.
to competition. Why would they give us any kind of break? We're direct competition, so we're getting squeezed the hardest. But they've squeezed too hard at this point. I mean, there's going to be quite a few pharmacies that can't survive the cash flow crunch in the next 2 years. It's going to be too much.
Yep.
But Brian, what about patient steering with infusions? Don't you guys have major problems with that?
Yeah, definitely. There were some PBM policies through insurance companies where they just wouldn't pay for provider administered drugs, biologics in particular, in hospital care settings, UHC, which makes sense. We support site of care optimization, but in communities where that's the only access point, the patients need to get access to drug. Otherwise, they're going to at least double the annual economic per capita burden of that disease. So I totally lost my train of thought.
It's the
That's
smoking
common
that
in this industry, Brian.
Brian,
This
you're saying
happens to us
something
all the
about you
time.
liked PBM.
I must have over smoked this old fashioned.
What you smoking it with, Brian?
I just totally went blank. Shannon, what was the cue that you provided me there?
Steering.
Steering. Thank you.
Yeah. And I
Oh.
apologize for the dog. She hates PBMs really bad. You said them. She barked. I'm sorry.
Good dog.
Yes. I mean, that's PBM policies. They're literally clawing back my brain. So yeah, side of care. Absolutely. Side of care steering. So that was historically several years ago. We kind of pushed back and got some exceptions from that. What we're seeing now, which is particularly problematic, is steering drug through specialty pharmacies. So requiring infusion centers to acquire drug through specialty pharmacy, which means they lose their drug payment. So I got to get in the weeds here. Otherwise it's going to make no sense. So apologies. Infusion centers have two different payments that comprise their total reimbursement. And they generally bill under what's called the buy and bill model, where they purchase drug, they maintain inventory, they own that drug. Prescription order comes in, they deliver that drug, they turn around and bill the insurance company, right? They buy the drug, deliver it, and then bill, hence buy and bill. So there is a payment for the drug plus a percent add-on, help to cover, differences in costs, differences between acquisition costs and reimbursement, et cetera. And then there is
An
a
actual
professional
percentage
service
audit?
payment.
So you don't
What was
lose
that,
money
Jeremy?
on your inventory? It's an actual percentage add-on?
Yes.
So you don't lose money on your inventory like a normal business?
Oh, well, that's assuming that they actually pay the rates in the contract. So
Oh, I see. Okay, this is sounding more familiar now.
Normal
yeah,
businesses don't
this is
lose money
still
on-
this is a different verse in the song of we rewrite terms of the contract midterm without the other party of the contract agreeing. Yeah, similar shenanigans, just a little bit different. So there's two payments, right? So there's a payment for the drug, right? You took the risk to own the drug, great, and we'll give you a margin to help you cover any differences between acquisition cost and reimbursement, which doesn't happen. And then there's a payment for the professional service to deliver that drug.
Oh my.
So the issue here is providers are losing approximately $1,200 per 3-hour infusion service, even at the highest possible reimbursement on that professional service payment. Yeah, which is why that percent add-on on the drug payment is the secret sauce to making this equation work.
So that's
It's
how they're
that
fucking
margin
people.
that offsets losses on the professional service side across their entire drug portfolio. So they're losing money on a lot of their drugs, even their drug payments. But it's the net across the entire portfolio that gets them above water with a reasonable margin to then fuel growth on.
So what you're paying for your professional service, your cost to operate is, of course, a lot more than what it would be for like a normal pharmacy. They've, of course, eliminated our cost to dispense completely. Like we might get 10 cents or something. And so they're underpaying you all also on that one. And so you're trying to have to make it up on the other end, is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like ridiculous. Like the average total practice expense to furnish one infusion service hour pre-pandemic was $430 an hour. Post-pandemic is $520+ an hour.
Yeah.
The highest possible reimbursement. So again, that's over $500 an hour. So for a 3-hour service, taking economies of scale out of the equation, rough operating costs of $1,500 for that service. The issue is that at the highest level possible reimbursement, CMS is paying $208. In which, if you talk to representatives on the AMA RUC committee, which determines the valuation of these codes, they would say infusion providers are grossly overcompensated.
Oh,
Based on 17-year-old survey data that surveyed practice models that don't infuse drug.
Yep.
So I can tell
That's
you
how they do it.
last summer's infusion market is night and day different than today's infusion market. So the market 17 years ago bears absolutely no resemblance to what it costs today. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this concept of inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It gets more and more expensive just to live every day, especially to run a business. Those reimbursement rates haven't increased in 17 years since this reimbursement methodology was implemented. So we're like, talk about reimbursement volatility, right? We've got the most cost-effective care setting that is trying to unlock the value and cost savings potential of these medications by driving a paradigm shift in how we approach disease management, right? And so they're pivoting patients from managing symptoms of disease flare, unmanaged, like autoimmune disease, for example, where the body is attacking itself, doing irreparable damage, et cetera, forcing these patients into the emergency department to get stabilized. It's often a medical emergency requiring hospitalization. And then they're repeating all of this healthcare that they've consumed throughout the year at a hospital fee structure, ED or inpatient. So infusion centers are able to pivot these patients, the highest burden patients that cost the most to manage throughout the year, to a wellness management paradigm with virtually no reliance on other healthcare. The problem is making that economically viable. And so this whole shift, this PBM forcing drug to be acquired through a specialty pharmacy conveniently enough that they own, removes that drug payment. And so we are forcing every provider to be at a minimum $1,200 underwater on every drug. I haven't been able to discover an industry in the world where a business can sustainably operate on minus $1,200 margins.
Nope.
Again, unless
Doesn't
that
exist.
government is issuing a money printing machine and you are an extension of the treasury, it just doesn't work. Those numbers don't add up. Plain and simple. And that's not accidental. It's not coincidental. It's not convenient. That is by design. And it's also not surprising that we're seeing insurance companies and PBMs who have been vertically integrated now are setting up their own infusion centers. And so they're trying to own the entire care continuum from coverage to actual point of care.
To that
they sell it
point,
as efficiency.
Exactly.
Which is
Efficiency,
like,
value,
if
and
you wanna
cost
follow
savings.
Matt Stoller.
Give me
Efficiency is
one
the biggest
real world
lie
example.
ever pushed on us.
Give me one real world
Efficiency.
example where total vertical integration of an entire supply chain, start to finish, was anything but terrible, except for the one party that was able to create that monopoly.
Yep.
Or in this case, an oligopoly comprised of three bodies that dominate what? You guys know better than I do now. 80+% of the market?
Yeah.
It's 80.
Yeah, there was
That's
a
just PBM.
there was an article that Shannon sent over. You guys may have seen it in the Wall Street Journal about the FTC or DOJ, I guess, is looking at the possibility of breaking up the ad business around Google.
Oh, no, they filed a lawsuit to do exactly that.
So yes, thank you. So, because I haven't read the article, I only saw the headline. And the question is, well, if they can do that to Google, why can't they do that in a clear sector that, clearly has this problem? Because Brian, everything you've just described, every single person, here at our happy hour has experienced that the losses, the lack of professional respect, the diminishing of therapeutic credibility between patients and their providers. It's just, you would think like we cannot go further down this spiral, and yet magically we are. And you just went through a beautiful description of how it's happening in your industry.
Yeah.
I
If you have the
family
resources and the
pharmacist.
influence, you keep the game structured to benefit you.
Yeah.
I come from a family pharmacist, and we've got to the point where we're just telling our family members not to go into pharmacy.
Which is
healthcare-
terrible. It's exactly the same with physicians, right? You've got physicians telling other people, like, if I did it again, I wouldn't go into it. Which I mean, I don't think there could be a stronger signal for we have a systemic problem that we have to solve. Otherwise, literally, there will be no healthcare.
Yeah.
So here's my question. We've subjected pharma to all sorts of crazy restrictions, regulation, reporting requirements, transparency, and all of that, because they stand to gain crazy dollars on people's health and well-being and just desire to live whatever life we can. Insurance companies have no fiduciary responsibility to their beneficiaries. How is that? I pay a company hundreds of dollars a month to manage my risk, yet they have no fiduciary responsibility to actually provide the care that I've contracted to receive, but instead have legislative and regulatory flexibility to rewrite the rules of that game mid-game to suit them and avoid actually covering that contracted care or providing the contracted coverage for the care that I need.
Because
How-
you're not
how
the
is that?
actual customer. It's the employer. That is their argument to get around so much stuff. It's because the employer is the actual consumer.
But what if I bought a individual plan directly from the insurer
Yeah.
or a family plan and I'm not going through my insurer, or I buy it through a marketplace?
Yeah. I completely
It's
agree.
statutorily in law.
As if it's employer based.
Yeah,
all of it.
insurers have been able to carve out fiduciary responsibility because it benefits them, and they've somehow framed it as a way, for generate value and cost savings or whatever talking points they insert here to be able to get the power, influence, and flexibility they get. But
It's easy to show cost savings whenever you're making up the numbers.
yeah, I mean, what would happen if consumers across the country came together and said, you know what, fuck this,
Yeah.
no,
I mean, they've tried. There's just so
of
much
course
money
they've tried,
involved
but-
that they won't let it happen.
Well, why hasn't the AMA come in and said, hey, wait a minute, time out. You were overruling
exactly
the
why.
prescribing authority. Of course we do. Okay, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but hashtag medical industrial complex.
Yep.
So, Greg, I have kind of going off what Brian just said, though, Greg, when you were doing all that amazing work with the Georgia Pharmacists Association, didn't you guys tackle like fiduciary duty and some things like that? I or maybe I have a vague memory of that. But...
Yeah, we obviously we passed a lot of bills dealing with PBMs, and fiduciary duty was in one of those bills. It didn't make it to the final cut, but certainly it was something we looked to do. And in addition, obviously, we were really aggressive trying to stop vertical integration. We had filed, on one of the bigger mergers, we had filed an opposition and were able to get some key concessions for one of those big mega mergers. And so obviously it's something that we've been fighting a long time. But look, and here's the reality. And listen, insurers were never loved, right? And they always kind of printed money. But PBMs took the game to a whole new level.
Yes.
Right. And they were the ones who really were able to monetize vertical integration first. Right. And design.
Because they
plans.
are the only ones in the supply chain that are saving money and lowering costs.
Yeah. But so
They're in the corner of the patients.
they are now starting to run the same game in other fields. Right. So in certain ways, pharmacy was the canary in the coal mine. Fast forward after they're just printing money and profits, far surpassing the insurance companies. The insurance companies either bought the large PBMs or the large PBMs bought the insurance companies, right? But so a lot of those practices we're starting to see go out into some of these other healthcare settings. And look, the sad reality is the largest employer of physicians today is an insurance company, right? The largest employer of physicians in the nation is an insurance company, with a lot of the other insurance companies and PBMs trying to follow suit really, really quickly, right? And, to me, think about this, right? Like the physician and the pharmacist have always been the patient advocate, when there's a prior authorization, when there's a step therapy, and those pharmacists and those physicians were the ones saying, hey, this patient needs this drug, right? It may not be on the formulary, but this patient needs this drug. And when we live in a world now where the insurance company owns the pharmacy, stifling pharmacy patient's choice of pharmacy, and then the insurance company owns the physician, good God, who's left for the patient to advocate, right? I mean, it's a scary proposition, because at least now, patients know that, hey, my physician thinks I need this drug, but my insurance company isn't covering it. They're helping me fight for it. But as you have these insurance companies owning the physician, and they're the same companies or affiliated companies that are setting the restrictive formulary, and they're steering to their pharmacy, patients aren't even they're not gonna know what drugs they really should be getting prescribed. And they're not gonna know what procedures they really need, right? I mean, it's really the implications here obviously are devastating for community pharmacy, devastating for
It goes
providers.
beyond that. But at this point, it's like on top of that, you've got the entire issue that we're the only ones that call out a lot of the BS in the system.
Right.
If they own most of the physicians and they own most of us or put most of us out of business, there's not going to be anyone to call that out. And you're seeing all of these lawsuits of fraud constantly every single year, and they still keep them in these networks. And we're going to eventually evolve to where we're at the point where we have universal health care. They're all positioning themselves to be like, well, it's universal, but we use a private company to do it. They're all positioning themselves to be that company, and they're going to defraud the government left and right. And they're going to be too powerful to do anything about it. There's also that on top of it. But go ahead, Greg. I just had to throw that in there. There's just
no. I mean, I think it brings it home, right? I mean, it's the implications are for patients. It's hard to quantify, right? It's scary stuff. And then on top of that, these companies literally, and I mean literally, have more cash on hand than nations do, right? So it's amazing.
Yeah, imagine if Ukraine had the money that CVS had, right? It would probably be like an altogether.
Well, it would have invaded Russia.
Russia would be gone by now.
Well, Greg, to your point too, the PBMs have caught a lot of flack for being the barrier between the patient and their medication because of the step therapies, the PAs, things like that. So once a patient goes through the process of actually getting a PA or getting through the step therapy, they're accepting the claim, but it's 100% copay. So the insurance company can step back and say, woohoo, we paid for it. No, I mean, good claim, we're good. Don't worry about it. We're not a barrier anymore. So they always find their little bullshit a way around things. Yep. And it's ticking me off.
Well, look, at a certain point, and obviously this isn't, we're not going to cure all the world's ills here, but from a PBM perspective.
Oh, I can right now.
At the end,
it's really not hard.
they can't be trusted to set drug prices, and they can't be trusted to create networks, right? Because anytime they're doing either of those two things, patients lose. If it's a government plan, taxpayers lose. Providers lose, right? The only one that wins is the PBM.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Can I share a story?
Please
do.
It's either fun or just debilitatingly depressing, depending on how you look at it. So,
God,
well,
you've already got me excited.
I went to a conference hosted by one of the trade associations for insurance plans. And so I'm walking around. I've been trying to find the picture because you guys won't believe me without the picture, but I have a picture. So I'm wandering the exhibit hall, which is outrageous, by the way. Puts like pharma, like the bio convention exhibit hall, like to shame.
Did they have John Legend performing for their?
They didn't, but they were giving away $75,000 AMGs.
Wow.
Literally.
There's no problem with healthcare in this country.
There was a no-name PBM that had so little market share, and they were raffling off a Mercedes AMG for one of their clients.
Wow.
And so naturally I roll up there, and this is a couple years after I came on board with NICA and established a brick and mortar. So company cars, like we could use company cars. So I went up and said, hey, this is great. I run a nonprofit, and man, we could turn some heads with the company car. Love to fill out a ticket. And they said, wait, time out. Did you say you're a nonprofit? Because that's not going to work. Like, this is just for our clients that are giving us millions of dollars a year. So if you're giving us millions of dollars a year, great. Please drop 2 tickets into our raffle. We would happily offer you the chance to win a $75,000 car. But if you're not giving us dollars a year,
Get your
Get out.
poor nonprofit butt away from our booth.
Keep on walking.
But
Don't
I
even
better
look
not
at
give
it.
any
Keep on
fucking
walking.
donuts to the local fucking physician's office. You do too many donut orders.
I
You're
know.
out of here.
Yeah. Seriously, we can't give pens to physicians, but we can give fucking AMGs to insurance companies. Get the fuck out. Double standards much? I mean, what aspects of healthcare actually make sense now?
None of it. It's a broken
Seriously.
system. But there's so much money in it, no one wants to do it. Like no one wants
I
to
know.
actually fix it. Because
There's about as much sense as PBMs coming to you and say, you know what, Jeremy, you're right. We give you guys way too many headaches. Why don't you just create your own books, paint by numbers? You tell us how much money we owe you.
Oh God, no! I'd immediately suspect a trap, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, you won't."
I'm calling my lawyer right now.
Doing this.
Monique, Brian triggered a question in my mind that I meant to ask earlier, but is PUTT giving away anything in connection with this first inaugural episode? Any cars or what's
your bag of decorative rocks?
Yeah.
Yes, we have a rock.
We have a rock. There you go. Yeah, no, we're not.
It brings up a great point, though.
Anything, but our wit and charm and our good time here tonight and our happy hour. It's really too bad, like as you were telling that story, Brian. I didn't see it going the direction it went. That was truly
Nobody
shocking.
does.
That was wild.
Yeah,
A legislator straight up told me I was full of shit when I told him that.
Oh, I'm
until
sure
I showed
did.
them the picture.
They drink that fucking Kool-Aid. So many of them
I'm
are
gonna
just
find
like,
it.
well, they can't be doing this. There's no way. Yeah, they fucking are. Like, what do you want from us? We've been
here's a
screaming
picture.
about this for years.
I always tell the story that when I first started with PUTT and people would, pharmacists would talk about this, I'd be like, are you sure? Because
Exactly.
It's
It's that
and they're
ludicrous.
nice people. And then, you start to see it happening, and you just think, you think everything from, we're in the 21st century. This can't possibly be happening 2,000 years after Jesus. And we're in the United States. This is couldn't possibly be happening. And, in our country, and it's like, well, not only is it happening in our country, we're the only country where it's happening. It's just.
That's why the FTC investigation is so important. It will lend a lot of credibility to a lot of things because people just write off the shit we say. It's insane. And the physicians, they didn't listen to us until they started coming for their shit. And now it's just like, oh no, talk to this. Let's go.
I will say, I think.
Well, I guess I'll give this good RX card out. Fuck you. Oh, come on.
Good RX. That'll be the topic of our next PBM on the Rocks happy hour. Well, my goodness. So this is quite the robust conversation. Deb, you've been a little quiet. Anything you'd like to add to what we've been talking about tonight?
Deb's horrified.
Please don't resign as president, Deb, please.
Jeremy's not wrong. This is horrifying. I just think it's sad. I was going back through my emails, and it looks like I've been working on this little project in some kind of semblance for almost 12 years now.
Wow.
Whether it's reaching out to legislators or trying to fix this whole thing. And sometimes I feel like we make a few steps forward, but for the most part, they're smarter and richer than we are. And they yank the rug out from underneath us just when we think we're getting somewhere. And I think someday we're going to get a win, and it's going to be a huge win. But at what cost, and who's going to be left?
Yep.
And maybe it's, when the FTC releases their report, hopefully. I think the fact that we haven't seen a report yet is hopefully a good sign. Our sources are indicating that they're committed to spending a good bit of time here to do it right. So it sounds like they're chewing through quite a bit of meat.
That's because both political parties need cover, because they both want something to be done about it, but they don't want that lobby money to end, and they do not want to take the blame from that side of things either. So it's going to get done.
Can you imagine
and
what
things
politics will look like if we pulled all PCMA PAC money out of the equation?
Collapse like a house.
Oh man.
Yeah. Would the world implode?
It might.
It implode, but if it got better, Imagine a world like that.
Imagine patient care centered on patients. Imagine healthcare that was actually about
that's
health.
the thing. That's what Deb was talking about earlier. She's just like, oh, and then they're always 2 steps ahead of it because they're not actually doing anything. Like they can devote all their time and money to like outmaneuvering us while we're actually taking care of people. Like we can't win. We have to actually have political support and like bring up enough people on our side and to force the political will at this point, because there's no actual political will with the legislators that are taking that money. You have to make it to where it is an existential threat if they don't address this.
Do you know anybody at the federal level who is actually outwardly pro-insurance? Because we know that Grassley, Chuck Grassley, Diana Harshbarger, so she's a representative. Chuck Grassley's a senator. Buddy Carter is a representative. We know they are, openly anti-PBM. James Lancaster, is that right, in Oklahoma?
What's bro?
I think I've got his name wrong. I can see him.
Wyden.
But there's like four that I can identify right off the top of my head, having had half of the bourbon drink that I've had, that I know are, outwardly and openly anti-PBMs. Do we know of anybody that's like openly pro-insurance?
I do.
You do?
Thankfully, he is not in office anymore.
Great.
Former chair of, coincidentally and conveniently enough, the House Insurance Committee in Texas.
Oh, really? Okay.
Former Chairman Phillips. Yeah, if you were pushing any sort of bill that the insurance or PBM lobby wasn't in support of, you weren't allowed in his office.
I'm a mill in my poop.
Wow.
Like literally, his staffers had a picture of my face and everyone else in our coalition. It was trying to push a nominal switching bill, and we couldn't even cross the threshold of his office.
So to former Chairman Phillips, we disavow any knowledge of any poos that you get from Virginia. Just saying.
Oink.
Yeah.
I think
I'm glad you're out of office.
Yeah.
I think we also have to be
that sounds like an extreme example. I've been doing this.
Oh yeah, can't get more extreme.
What I would say is there are certainly folks who look. It's much easier to pass something. It's much easier to change than it is to stop a bill and to keep the status quo, right? And so I think there are legislators out there that are really sympathetic or vulnerable to arguments of change and the sky falling and inflation, or premiums going through the roof and costs going up. But by and large, I've talked to a lot of folks in U.S. Congress, talked to a lot of folks in states, and by and large, when you sit down and you walk through what pharmacists are facing, and you walk through how patients are being steered, again, I've seen massive bills pass at the state level 50-0 in favor, right? And so that's not to say that there aren't folks with questions and some folks who buy into increased premiums, et cetera. But I by and large, I think when you make the argument in the right way, pharmacy has a winning argument, right? And I believe this. Pharmacy is right on these issues. And so I think that's great. I'm not as cynical in certain ways. Some days, Monique, we joke around. I feel like I'm like Don Quixote chasing windmills, right? And is anything going to change? But that said, I think the big mistake when you look at pharmacy, and we've evolved over the course of 10 years. When I first got into this, folks wanted, nothing but an audit bill of rights, right? But and when you look at the bills that have passed in certain states that are really sweeping and really aggressive, and when you think of the money that they spend, and I've seen 50 lobbyists against 1 or 2 on the pharmacy patient side, and yet pharmacies won. And I think it's a testament to the work that pharmacists do, the regard they're held in. But the game continues, right? Like they always evolve. They always find loopholes. And so even when pharmacy has won, it hasn't necessarily changed things. And so what I think, I believe this to my core, but pharmacy needs to fight the right fights, and they need to fight aggressively, right? No more, so often we're going after symptoms, right? Or we're chasing fireflies over here, and we're not cutting the legs off, right? And
Greg,
at the
I
end
would
of the
say
day,
if we're Don Quixote chasing windmills, full on, we have to get together and we have to have an actual message, and we got to actually full on fight. And we can't play their game because they will always win their game.
So I've got
go ahead, Deborah.
We've done a really good job of fighting for our patients, and we've always been told you can't go in there and fight for yourself. You can't go in there and fight for the pharmacy because you're the business owner. They're going to think you're just a rich guy that just wants to make money. So we fight for our patients, and that's awesome because many of the victories that we've won have really truly helped our patients to our detriment. So patients' co-payments went down, or they leveled out between if you're in a preferred pharmacy, non-preferred pharmacy. A lot of good things happen for patients, not necessarily for pharmacy. And I think we have to get to the point where we're not just fighting for our patients, we're fighting for us so that we can keep our patients.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
We're at that point.
I think we also have to look at, so if we can get the FTC to unwind the PBMs or break them up, what does healthcare look like then? Because the argument will be, it's so intertwined, we're too big to fail, you can't take us apart. Someone's going to have a vision or a plan to where it's okay to take them apart. It's okay to break them up. Here's the way it's going to work. And that might be where we can step in and try to start putting that vision out there.
Agreed. So I think it's unfortunately not enough to have a winning argument these days. The missing ingredient continues to be sustained engagement from stakeholders. Well, and money, obviously. Money makes everything happen. But if we can get stakeholders, whether they're pharmacists or patients or doctors, to engage and stay engaged to the finish line, we can pull that ball over the finish line. But that's always been the problem is you all have to run businesses. You all have staff to take care of. You got people to take care of. You can't just step away from your business, 20 hours a week to fight these fights, which is why advocacy groups were created, to fight your fights. So that's where we're at. Once we figure out how to solve that problem, like we can fix healthcare. We just haven't figured out how to mobilize all of you and your patients in a sustained fashion to drive and maintain that collaborative momentum while you can still do the rest of your day-to-day life.
I think we're getting to the point where you're seeing so much patient advocacy out there. Look at how many patients have been getting on and just like complaining about their denied coverage and getting it approved right after it goes viral. Like, it's now becoming an entire thing where, insurance was denying this claim, or the PBM was denying this or that, until we went to social media and brought a bunch of attention to it. This is something that we actually need to use in our favor and being like, okay, well, how come they got to skip that process? Is it because it was bad on the insurance company? There needs to be actual like standardized ways of going through this. Actually, no, blow that fucking up and let us actually take care of our patients. We spend more money in this country in the name of fraud, waste, and abuse than we would just letting people just do anything they wanted. It's insane.
We also spend more per capita on healthcare than any other developed country, yet we're nowhere near the top in any meaningful indicator of health. How does that make sense?
Our life expectancy is going down while we're paying a fortune for healthcare. How does that make sense?
America.
So, as we're coming to, the end of the drinks, I know we've gone in 14 different circles of PBMs, and quite honestly, there's not an area that there isn't a problem. Any parting thoughts, Brian?
Yes. So, reminded me of a question that I always ask in our focus groups and ad boards and stuff. If you had a magic wand and you could fix any aspect of healthcare, what would it be? So let's spin that and say, if you could Expelliarmus your little magic wand and fix one aspect of PBM's influence in the supply chain, what I would fix is it's kind of a cheating answer, I guess. Completely remove them from the patient-clinician relationship. Remove them as middlemen. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I would remove rebates. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Rebates
There you go.
disappear.
That's the route.
Personally, I'm a fan
that
of
preference
Petrificus
listing.
totalis.
Expelliarmus. Actually,
No.
have my Harry Potter one here.
Petrificus totalis. That way they get, turned to stone. They're totally frozen. They can't go in. They can't go forward. They can't go backward. We just stuff them in a closet and leave them there. Well, Deb, what about you?
I think if we returned them to the transactional companies that they used to be and eliminate all the funky fees and things that they do, that would be a step in the right direction. And I love the idea of trying to get people active and advocating and sustain that. So that's going to be kind of my focus this year, especially in Minnesota, is not only engage my Mindy's, but also get my friends of Mindy's rolling, which is all of the customers of the Minnesota Independent Pharmacies to fight with us.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you've done so much in Minnesota with the Mindy's. It's just this woman, for those of you who do not know, this woman is an independent pharmacy owner. She and her husband own 2 pharmacies, and she, from the ground up of non-existence, completely organized an independent pharmacy association in Minnesota through nothing but just a Google group. And now it's like taking on the industry. It's fantastic.
It is amazing. She's done great work.
Passion and grit.
I love what they're doing, and I'm going to keep pushing them.
Well, Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I think we're all pretty much on the same page here, and I'm going to be redundant, right? But again, I think PBMs can't be setting drug prices, period. They can't be creating networks. And then to Brian's point, I think that's also spot on, right? I think they shouldn't be setting formularies, right? And when you take those tools away from them, if they're still there and they're administering claims as a third-party administrator, so be it. But we've seen enough to know that when they set drug prices, when they create networks, and when they take rebates, nobody wins but them. And so I think that's it. But the other thing I would say is, again, we've seen massive bills pass at state levels, which is fantastic. But I think this is the time not to take the foot off the gas, right? But this is the time to apply pressure. You've, for the first time ever, right, you've got an FTC that recognizes that this vertical integration has had anti-competitive effects. You have a Congress that has weighed in and said, hey, we want to tackle drug pricing. And a lot of those members recognizing for the first time that PBMs are a central part of that problem. And there's momentum to build on in the states, right? Pharmacy has gone all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court and beaten PBMs. They've beaten 50 lobbyists in state after state after state. And so I think it's the time for them, make some new alliances, work with other providers, work with patient groups, and just turn up the heat, turn up the pressure, and start advocating for the solutions that we're talking about here today, right? No more small ball. Let's fight the fights that fix it.
On top of that, I would actually say, don't give them any quarter. We should not take our foot off the gas. Even in an adjudication role, I don't want them to do that. Do you trust them to do that after everything? They really shouldn't exist. All the companies that are doing this right now, they should not be around. That's as far as we can go, complete elimination. If we do anything and we have someone take on that role, it should be completely different companies, because these are gone. These are just too far gone.
I'm sensing a new hashtag no quarter.
I like that. I love that.
It was better than the hashtag guillotines I tried to get going. I got banned.
Jeremy,
that may result in the same thing that got you banned from Twitter with the wishing that CBS corporate would burn down.
Right, what does Jeremy mean when he says complete elimination? I would take that one way if Brian was saying it, but somehow when Jeremy says it, I'm like, I don't know.
Why is he holding a guillotine while he says it?
Blank. Hashtag guillotines. Blank. No, I'm sure they're decent people. That's why they went to go work for PBMs.
Well, and Jeremy, you're going to bring us full circle, man. I'm almost scared to ask. What are your thoughts?
You know my thoughts. PBMs, I will not stop until every single company that does this right now does not exist. And that's what PUTT is for, like it's for truth and transparency. Truth and transparency will not actually exist until the PBM are gone. They're integrated. They're in with the healthcare companies up to insurance level, all the way down to provider level. They got to go. In the end, we will never actually have healthcare in this country as long as it is owned by these companies. And I won't stop, and I will continue to scream, and it's going to go on probably longer than I'm alive, which is insane because I'm immortal, thanks to denial. But I will continue to do this my entire life. And that's the real answer, is we cannot have corporate-owned healthcare. Not at this level, not in this way.
Bad things happen when you monetize health.
Yes.
Agreed. And for everybody out there listening, cheers to you. Until next time, this is PBM on the Rocks.
To learn more about Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency and how you can help fight PBM abuse of our healthcare system, visit our website at truthrx.org.